Hello gamers, and welcome to Mechabellum. This is the reason I have not been making videos in the last couple of weeks, is because I've been addicted to this game, and I've got to justify the time I spent on it somehow, so this is the video you're getting. Now, I normally play Star Sector on this channel, so if I want to describe the appeal of this game in those terms, it's like if you really like building your fleet and you love the combat and you love watching your ships do their own thing, but you don't actually like piloting your flagship yourself. You just leave it on autopilot. That is what this game is all about. It's all about the preparation before the battle. You set the pieces up and then just let them do their thing and see what happens. And then this is a sort of a turn-based game, sort of a real-time game, because you set things up, you see things play out, and then you go, oh crap, I'm an idiot and I set up my army wrong. Now I've got to fix it, because everything you placed on round one is now locked in for the rest of the game. And then same thing when happens when you get to round two, you place your units, they're locked in for the rest of the game. And so you build your strategy in layers, each time trying to make something that works together but also counters your opponent's strategy. That's the basic appeal of the game. Now, I'm not like a top tier player by any means. Obviously, I've only been playing for a couple weeks, but I'm at like 1450-ish MMR right now. So I've definitely picked up a few things, partly just from my own experience and partly from watching YouTubers who are good at the game, like the Rat himself, Suri Mechabellum. And I am going to employ a few strategies that he does talk about. But we'll get to that when we get to that. The first thing I'm going to do is play aggressive. Now, this is not normal. Most people seem to play standard or defensive, which means I'm not really sure what the difference between standard and defensive is, to be honest, because both of them look the same to me, which is that they huddle around their towers and cower in fear. I have no fear. I'm going on right up on the front line of the deployment zone. Oh yeah, and just to be clear, if you've never seen this game before, when you're actually playing the game, you only get to see what you're doing. You do not see what your opponent's doing. This is because I'm in a replay that I can see both sides of the battle. In an actual game, you're blind. You have no idea what your opponent's doing. So I've got my unit set up all on the front line because I want to take his tower. And I think the towers are a really great design choice for this game, because you don't win when you take the towers, but it does apply a massive debuff to your opponent's army for 9 seconds. So it's not a guaranteed win if you take them, but it does make things a lot easier. And that's why I love to go straight for them. It's fun. It gives you that dopamine rush. When you're like, yes, I took the enemy's tower. Now I can crush his army. And here we can see the steel balls, very good at single target damage and very fast, but have fairly short range and bad at clearing out crowds of smaller units. Which it turns out makes him very good at taking towers. But here you can see the crawlers are a spammable melee unit, and then my opponent has hounds like this, which unfortunately are doing pretty well against my army in the first round. We did take the tower, yes, but now you can see we're kind of faltering, because these crawlers that would have taken out all of his artillery got wiped out by these hounds. And I mean, trying to describe the appeal of this game, forget all that strategy. That's nerd talk, all right? The hound is literally a dog shotgun. You heard that right. Look at that. Look at the way it ejects its shells. It's a dog shotgun. Literally man's best friend. The only thing you need to know about this game. Hounds are very cool. So you can see it comes very close, but his last Stormcaller does missile my hound, so I just barely lose. And the way damage works is we both have our health, and surviving units do damage roughly equal to their value to your opponent's health. So like cheaper units will do equal to their value, so a hound will do like 20 damage, because each pack is worth 100, so divide that by 5, it's 20 per hound. Versus bigger units tend to be a little under their value, which is probably for the best. Because like you could kill half of a squad of hounds, and that means that it loses half of its health damage, versus a big unit could survive at like 1% HP, and it still does its full damage. So I think it's only fair that they do a little bit less than their full value. So my opponent is really spamming the hounds. They're very strong right now, it seems like. I do like the hounds. I don't think I'm going to be spamming them that much. And here we can see the unit drop. Unit drop round, very important. The only RNG really is your starting unit composition. Right, you only have like 4 choices to choose from. which is enough that you can usually pick out something pretty decent. And then on top of that, in between each round, you'll get a selection of different cards to choose from. Most rounds, these are going to be like special abilities that you can use. Some of them cost more, some of them are free. But the cool thing is that both sides get the same choices. So usually this means it's fair. Usually. Not always, because sometimes your opponent will get a unit that they really need, or like a card that's really good for them, and you will not. But the fact that both sides are getting the same one means that it's not like, oh, there's like an overpowered card, and my opponent gets it and I don't. And it also makes it easier to predict what your opponent's going to choose and plan around it. The fact that you both get it. I think that's the fact that you both get the same selection makes it feel a lot more fair, despite the fact that the cards that show up are pretty RNG. Or pure RNG, really. The Farseer, man, when I first started playing, I thought it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, it's got like a scanning radar that boosts the range of units around it. But these upgrades are all actually kind of terrible, unfortunately, and the real reason that you pick this unit is because it hard counters basically all the air units, aside from like the really big ones. So if you get this on round 2 as one of your options, you just take it and your opponent can't play Wasps, they can't play Phoenixes, they can't play Wraiths. You just don't get to play any of those. They don't exist anymore because they just get hard countered by this thing. And of course, you can see I set up a flank with some crawlers back here, take the tower, no problem. My army loses, but because I'm taking the towers, I win. And that's basically how I'm going to be playing this game. I'm just trying to take the towers and then leverage that into a win. And my opponent is trying to defend the towers. Ironically, does not do a very good job at them. And there's a key mistake that I see a lot of players make. We'll get to that in a second, though. Because there's that round. You can see all the crawlers do their damage. Boom, there's the Farseer damage. Yeah, you can see the selection here. I do get scared for a second that he might pick the Elite Hacker. Because hackers could be really good against my Steel Balls. Which is a great name, by the way. Steel Balls. Right? When you have your opening unit selection and you're not sure what to pick, the rule is, fuck it, we ball. That's the way that it works. If you don't know what to pick, you say, fuck it, we ball, and you pick Steel Balls. And just fantastic name. Obviously, as your units gain XP, you can spend money to level them up. I say money, supplies is what it's technically called. Oh wait, I didn't set up a flank yet. I'm going to do that later. No, it's just that the crawlers were able to just get to the tower because he didn't have enough units over on this side. And I think the big mistake that he makes is he just never levels up his towers. I know leveling up your tower doesn't improve your army's DPS in any way, but you go from, just for 100 supplies, you go from 3,000 HP to 23,000 HP. And leveling it up reduces the debuff duration. So it's just really, really cost effective. Like that first level at least, if not more levels. And the fact that I keep taking them and he just refuses to level them up is really strange to me. It would be very, very cost effective in this situation. So yeah, I can see here I set up some crawlers on the flank. Now the way that this works is the first round that you put something on the flank, it doesn't immediately spawn in. It has to load in, like through teleporting, quote unquote. That's the mechanic, which is to prevent flanking from being way too overpowered. And we'll see here, I use a lot of flanking positions, and I think it is very effective against this kind of defensive play. Again, going back to the Rat's advice, he says, like, if your opponent's playing defensive, you can put crawlers here, and you put some sledgehammers, which are just like a basic tank, over here, and it pulls the enemy's forces over here, and these guys are all going to die, but they last long enough that everything he puts behind his towers is distracted over here, leaving me a clear shot to the tower. And you can see I set up a mobile beacon, which does cost 100 supplies to unlock, but it's usually worth it, because it forces your units to move this way and ignore all of these distractions and go straight for the tower. Now, I do kind of mess it up by pulling them over this way, because now the Farseer is going to kill my Wraith. And as I said, you can't really go Wraith if your opponent goes Farseer, usually. In this case, I did see the improved firepower control system offered as an item, and they are really good on Wraiths, so I decided, and I like Wraiths a lot, so I decided to take it despite the fact that my opponent has a Farseer. And you'll see here, as soon as the tower debuff ends, this level 1 Farseer is just demolishing this Wraith, when this thing is supposed to be one of the tankier, it's a heavy aircraft. It's meant to be one of the tankier options. It just gets demolished by this thing. kind of sucks, honestly. And the thing is, the Farseer has all these cool upgrades, and none of them are actually good. Aside from the EMP, because it's so cheap. But that's kind of it. And again, we see super heavy armor, another item that is really good on Wraiths. So I'm like, alright, fuck it. We're going Wraiths. I don't care that he's leveled up his Farseer. I don't need to know. I'm just going to put heavy armor on my Wraiths and call it a day. I also make sure to get some crawlers like back here and back here, so that if he tries to set up a flank with crawlers like this, then they're not going to get straight to the tower. Man, it is... Oh yeah, and something I do tech is I take the defense upgrade. Now, in Star Sector, getting army-wide or fleet-wide bonuses, even if it's like 5%, is actually really good in that game because, I mean, the mechanics are just very different. So stacking up lots of small bonuses ends up tipping the balance of power drastically in your favor. In this game, these bonuses are actually not so good because it's more about setting up counters. Like, a marksman is a unit that has great single target damage, but is terrible at clearing out groups of units. If you give it 10% more damage, that doesn't really change the fact that it gets hard countered by crawlers. Like, it still sucks against them, and it's still going to lose. You can give it as many damage bonuses as you like, and it doesn't matter. And for that reason, stat bonuses are nice, but not really essential. You see here, I beacon a little bit better this time, and I've got another Wraith spawning in. This one's very tanky thanks to the super heavy armor. And I've got my sledgehammers here, and you can see, after they load in, they do a pretty good job at pulling all of his units to the corner. And now his Farseer's level 3, jeez. Which then makes it easier for the steel balls and the Wraiths to just push their way up to the tower. Of course, my opponent's going to win on the left side, but that's fine. I just need the crawlers to distract him long enough that I can make a run for the tower. And yet, even with the super heavy armor, the level 3 Farseer is just going to demolish this Wraith. It's not even close. And we'll speed up this replay. And one of the nice things about the replay feature is this button right here. This button right here. But we'll get to that when we get to that. And you can see here, now I'm going to lose to the Farseers, which at first kind of made me regret going into Wraiths at this point, but we'll see. And once again, options available. My opponent takes the electromagnetic blast. I was a little scared of the nuke. I didn't want to take those because I didn't think they would be that good for me. I guess I could drop a nuke here, and that would clean up all of this, in theory. But I take the haste module. I put it on the Farseer because I'm planning to sell this anyways. This is just a temporary defense, so that my opponent can't really flank me with any air units. So I might as well put the item here because I'll get it back when I sell it, and then I can move it on to like another Wraith that I'm going to put over here. That's the idea anyways. And once again, we beacon these units to the tower. And I do believe I set up a shield here as well. Because I'm like, if he's going to nuke me, I hope that some of my units at least survive. But because like there's no way he would nuke on top of this. So if he places a nuke here, they'll survive if they're under the shield. And if they're not under the shield, hopefully they'll run forward far enough that they just get out of the nuke's radius. He takes the electromagnetic blast instead, which has a similar radius, but instead of killing everything, it just hits it with EMP. And unfortunately, what EMP does is it removes all of these tech upgrades. It temporarily disables them. And it just so happens that this round, I decide to get a bunch of tech upgrades, and he just EMPs everything. Not the best timing on my part. And you can see here on the left side, I did level up my tower. So while he is not leveling up his towers, I'm making an asymmetric push, going for the right side, and then letting him kill my units on this side, and then just go for the tower. But because I've leveled up the tower, it's not a big issue. Yeah, and there it is. 40% speed debuff and shutting off all their technology. Kinda hurts. You can see once again, Crawler Sledgehammer does a great job pulling his units out of the way so that these units can just get beaconed straight to the tower. Bonk. And there she goes. Of course, one of the upgrades I get, normally range is really important, and that's because Wraiths just have such little range by default. But I go for field maintenance because, as you can see here, healing 4.5% of your HP every second is really good when you've got heavy armor, because it means that even the level 1 Wraith was able to just barely survive and take out the level 3 Farseer. obviously with some help, of course, in the damage department. But thanks to this healing, stacking with this item really nicely, it worked out pretty well. And of course, as soon as my opponent sees this, he's going to take the EMP upgrade on the Farseers. It only costs 100 supplies. So getting EMP on this, so all of its attacks will now disable the healing, is probably in his best interest at this point. Now, I think a way of changing the Farseer so that it's actually, these are more interesting is you could like cut the damage in half. For example, reduce the damage by 50%. Now, obviously, you know, not being an expert at the game, talking about game balance here, but I think an interesting idea would be cutting the damage by 50% so that it's no longer as good against like bigger, heavier aircraft. It would still be good against Wasps because it has splash damage, but it would be worse against a lot of the bigger aircraft. And then what you do is you take all of its upgrades and make them really cheap, because just like the EMP, right? Just as the EMP is only 100, you could take its other upgrades and drop them to like 100 or 200 supplies. And I think that would be really cool, because then it's like, okay, the unit by itself, not very strong, but it has access to all these really cheap upgrades that you can use to specialize it. Like if you need EMP, you could take the EMP upgrade. If you need anti-missile, you could take it for 100. If you need, well, Photon would probably have to be more expensive than 100. Heck, you could even give it anti-air specialization as one of its technologies. So then it's like, okay, by default it's bad against, say, Wraiths, but if you take the 100 supplies on the anti-air specialization, now it's good against them. I think that would be a much more interesting unit than just something that you use to hard counter all of the early game air units and then sell once you get to like the late game. That would be a more interesting design, I think. But, you know, kind of a new player here, so maybe I shouldn't be giving too much advice. And here I set up my one of my favorite things is this little Wraith crawler bunker, because it's so easy to set up, but at the same time, your opponent has to commit a lot of resources to answer it. Because this thing is going to be a huge pain for him. Of course, my opponent sets up oil, which is going to slow down my units as they run through it, and then an ion beam, which he got from the reinforcements this round, which is going to demolish a lot of my units. I do get, yeah, I sell the Farseer, get the haste module on that, and I think I put the laser sights on this because I just run out of, yeah, I'm running out of time, so I just, fuck it. Although luckily the shield I set up does protect my hounds from that missile, so that's nice. Yeah, you can see here that ion beam is doing some pretty big damage, but the level 2 Wraith with field maintenance is tanky enough that it survives its short contact with the beam. Everything else, though, kind of evaporates. Now, luckily, the Wraith is able to get the tower, but you can see here, he has gotten EMP, which does shut off all of its technologies, so the healing is gone. But a level 2 Wraith with improved firepower control and the tower debuff is able to kill it fast enough. And then the rest of his army is not going to be able to take on these 2 Wraiths. Now, I really like this Wraith bunker in the corners here, because it forces your opponent to commit into some kind of answer, and then you can usually counter that. Usually it like wins you the rounds that you do it, and then your opponent has to commit really hard into some kind of answer, and then you're already in a position where you're like, okay, I can look at, for example, if you get to a unit drop round and your opponent sees a melter here, they're probably going to pick the melter to counter your Wraiths. So then you can pick something to counter the melter. It kind of gives you room to be one step ahead of your opponent. Of course, in this case, Raidens are a really, really good late game unit. It's just that they're often hard to get into. So getting a level 2 one for free and then throwing the laser sights on it feels like a pretty good starting point. Right, because then, like, I think next round, I can start building a ton of Raidens, I can start getting technologies on them, I finally get range on the Wraiths, I finally set up a sledgehammer crawler in this corner. So it's like, because I'm already in a pretty solid, advantageous position, I feel comfortable going for this as a late game unit. I also get range on these. Nice. Yeah, and I get more hounds. Because it's like, okay, I've double teched my hounds, might as well get more of them. Right, I should be, like, the hound, crawler, wraith combination is, it's more or less winning me so far. So I figured, like, that's a safe position to try and set up for late game Raidens now and transition into that. Apparently my opponent was thinking something similar because he also took the Raidens. Which is not working out too well for him. See, over here, even with the EMP, I mean, the Wraiths still kill this. He did kill one of my Wraiths, but now we took the tower, and I get the tower again on this side, so I'm still winning, although not super hard. None of these rounds are winning, like, devastating wins, but we're chipping away at his health. And then this round, I see the nuke, and I'm like, ah, boy. Again, he goes for the electromagnetic instead of the nuke once again. Probably because the nuke just takes so long to hit. Like, yes, it does kill everything, but it takes forever to hit. I take redeployment, though, because I'm like, he's going to drop a nuke here. He drops the electromagnetic instead, but it's fine, because I'm like, okay, I'll take redeployment, which is one of the few things in the game that actually let you move a unit you placed in an earlier round. So I'll move this over here, and I'll start building my Raidens over here. And now I can finally get, like, range on them, and then the next round I'll get EMP, and then I'll just stack up a bunch of Raidens over here, and it's just going to become unstoppable. That was my thought process there. Is that correct? Well, I don't know, but it did work pretty well. Yeah, my opponent, at this point, his hounds are a lot higher level than mine, and they both have the same technologies. I do think this round, or maybe the next round I level these, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm just too busy getting these Raidens. Yeah, this Wraith is now level 3. And it just feels good. It just feels good. Oh yeah, and we're round 8, so I start loaning. Gain 200 supplies, but next round you lose 300, so... I mean, if you're planning to win on the next couple of turns, there's not really any downside to just clicking this. Unless you end up failing, in which case your opponent might make a comeback. But I'm like, alright, beacon to the tower. And again, my opponent's life would be much easier if he leveled these towers. He just chooses not to. Not really sure about that one. Like, before, like, I beaconed this guy to the tower. I didn't even need to. There's literally nothing up front, so the Raiden with the range upgrade just snipes it immediately. Like, it's not even close. And all of his Raidens, he's stacked up in the back corner, and they're wasting their time shooting at these sledgehammers. Like, they're not doing anything. These are not a threat. I don't know what he's doing there. But here we can see, once again, Farseer shutting them off their healing, and then the quadruple Raiden actually doing something to kill them this time. But of course, he then loses this tower right as our two Raiden fleets collide, so obviously I'm going to win here. I don't know, that seems to be a fairly common mistake, is players just don't level their towers. Don't quite kill them, though. And this round, I see the melting points, and I'm like, yeah, he's going to take the melting points. Because those are very good at single target DPS, and I've got Wraiths and Raidens. Obviously, I'm very vulnerable. So what I end up doing is I take the steel balls, which I sold earlier, the ones that I had. But these ones I'm going to place right up front. I'm going to go mechanical division, so when they die, they spawn a bunch of crawlers. And while these are very good at single target DPS, they're pretty bad at clearing out crowds. So I figure a bunch of steel balls is the perfect front, like... I mean, ideally, I just have a ton of crawlers or something, or like sledgehammers, or, but you know, you only get 2 deployments per round, so getting them from the unit drop instead kind of lets me use my deployments for something else, which is really nice. And I figure since these guys are taking the tower pretty much for free anyways, why waste my mobile beacon on that side when I can use it on this side to force them forward and take this tower? And my opponent does something very interesting, which he sets up a crawler and an arc light here. I honestly didn't even notice this when I was playing. It's only looking at the replay that I noticed this. Because it dies to the crawlers. At some point I teched Impact Drill and Replicate, which I was kind of hesitant about against all these hounds. I thought, you know, maybe that'd be really bad. And I'm still not sure if that was a good decision. But in this case, it kind of paid off, because the extra damage means that in the time it takes these guys to load in, these crawlers actually just kill them. Which is amazing, because he committed so much, like, a melting point's very expensive. He's committed a bunch of resources to this flank, and it just dies to some crawlers. And I can see why he tried to flank here. Like, I haven't leveled this tower at all. I've only leveled this one. But at the same time, like, maybe think about doing some air units because crawlers are melee and they're just going to ignore them, and then the air units can have time to load in and hit the tower. But instead he does something I've never seen before and probably will never see again, which is a melting point in the back corner. Very interesting choice. You can see he sets up a missile here to take out those crawlers. I'm not sure what these missiles are for. I guess they're going to get the hound. I guess they'll get the hounds when they get in range. He missiles these crawlers and missiles these crawlers. That makes a lot more sense. I understand that. Well, let's just see how things play out, shall we? Oh, he missiles those ones too. See, the melting point is currently stuck on the hounds. We get the tower because, of course, this melting point immediately dies. This one does manage to lock onto the Wraith, but with the tower debuff, it's not really doing any damage. And it dies before the damage actually ramps up to any significant degree. At this point, my opponent surrendered once he realized that this stuff died to some crawlers, but we'll just see how it plays out naturally. Absolute perfection. Now, the question is, how good was my strategy? Because again, there are some decisions that I was not 100% sure if that was a good idea. And if they're not a good idea, then they might be a waste of resources. Maybe if my opponent was a better player, maybe I could have lost. Well, you can find that out by taking over and playing as your opponent. Now, obviously, if you lose a game, you can play as yourself, but I don't really like doing that, because usually when you lose, it's like not that hard to figure out what your mistake was, and it just kind of feels bad to look at a game that you've already lost. Versus games that I've won, it's like, okay, I felt like king of the world, big brain genius, I stomped my opponent into the dirt. Obviously, my strategy is flawless. That's the way that it feels when you win. But sometimes you take over your opponent and you try some things and realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm an idiot and my opponent could have easily killed me if he just did something slightly different. Like in this case, what if instead of the melting points, what if you took the marksman and just went anti-air? Because a lot of my big units are air, so what if he goes anti-air and, you know, while we're at it, go range? Oh my god, why does he have all of these in the back corner? That's such a terrible idea. And this thing's not really doing a whole lot. We'll sell that so we have more cash. Oh, and while we're at it, maybe level our towers. Yeah? We'll take the loan, temp range, temp speed. God, at this point, I'm not entirely sure what you do. He is in such a rough spot. I guess get EMP on the Raidens. Okay, what else can we get? We could easily get a couple more hounds. And then we can, like, missile a bunch of crawlers, I guess. And maybe missile some hounds, too, while we're at it. Alright, see how that plays out. Drop you guys over here. Because I've had games where I do this, I go take over my opponent, I level a tower, because he didn't for some reason, and then suddenly my brilliant winning strategy gets crushed. And then it's like, it's a very good experience, I think, after a win, is to try and play your opponent and see, poke at your own weaknesses. Okay, so a bunch of crap gets missiled. Alright, let's see. I do end up leaving this one over here. I wonder if that was the right decision. You can see the tower doesn't immediately explode, although this steel ball does look like it's going to get the tower regardless. But at the very least, one of the nice things is that leveling your tower reduces the debuff duration. So even if you do lose it, it's not as painful. I'm not sure the marksman actually did anything, to be honest. Because the Wraiths did get killed on the left side. But all of this stuff is still alive on the right side. And now we're in this situation. So this is looking a lot closer. Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot closer. But not quite a win. Maybe if I sell... Let me try that again. I feel like I could beat my strategy here. It was pretty close. Yeah, maybe instead of the marksman... What if I take this, I sell... the sandworm. We're still going to level these. I don't know what the explosion is for. It seems to be a bit of a bug. Okay. So before I got more hounds, what if instead I go like... alone, we're going to do that. What if we just go mass recruitment, get triple Raiden, we get EMP, and we missile some of the more important crawlers. And we just go with that. Without the marksman, is this actually better? I mean, Raiden's with double tech are probably better than the anti-air marksman, even at level 3. Probably. We'll see. They did still lock onto the tower. Maybe I should have put them more forward so that they would actually hit the steel balls instead of the crap in the corner. Yeah, it does look like without the marksman, the wraiths are lasting longer. And these guys are just dying anyways. Alright. Yeah, it's funny. I think most people would do this kind of like optimizing against on the games that they lose. I tend to do it as my opponent on the games that they win. I don't know. That's just the way that I approach things. Yeah, there's got to be a way. Missile this, missile this. You gotta missile all these crawlers. Yeah, I think I put them too far back. I was too safe with them. I think if I put them more forward so that they could hit these steel balls. Then again, from his perspective, there's no way he would know that these are coming. I mean, he could have guessed, but like that would be a wild guess. And just putting them up front here is just asking to lose to these Raidens. So I don't know. Yeah, definitely room for improvement there. Well, anyways, that's enough about this game. Sorry about the graphics. Just imagine that they look good instead of all blurry because my computer can barely run this game. So unfortunately, this is the best that I can do without the game stuttering and looking like a complete mess. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.